Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone to this week's edition of Imperial as One's Belonging series, where we explore the lived experiences of individuals from the Black, Asian, and minority ethnic communities, and people who've shared their experiences of gaining their sense of identity and their sense of belonging. Now, I have to admit, just before we go into this session today, it's our birthday. Belonging is now 4 years old today, right? 4 years ago we started this, and it's been a pleasure to do Belonging for those 4 years. And every week I've always said that we have a special guest, and I'm gonna introduce our guest because I think she's a gift that just keeps on giving, right? And so our guest this week is Sheena Cardoso. And Sheena is a Equalities, Diversity and Inclusion Coordinator at Imperial College. And Sheena, thank you for being our birthday guest, the gift that just keeps on giving. So I'm going to start off by asking you our usual first question, which is, can you tell us what it was or what it is that gave you your sense of identity and your sense of belonging as you were growing up?
Hi Wayne, hi everybody. Thanks for coming and attending. For me, my sense of when I was really young, I think for me it was my community, the place that I grew up in. My family, I think, is a big factor as to what played in my belonging. I grew up in Goa, so life is very different there. It's very close knit as a community. The place that I grew up in, we live all very close. Our neighbors are very close. So I think that was my biggest, I think those are the people that one grounded me, but also just gave me the sense of where I belonged. Um, as part of my community, I was also part of the church. So I did a lot of church activities. I grew up Catholic, so that was a huge part of like who, of my identity at that point as well. Um, who I was. And who I was kind of associated with as well. Aside from being my parents' child, you know, that was the other association because I was the youngest sibling. Um, uh, yeah, so that was, I think, for me, that community, my family were the most important, I think, at that point for where I belonged.
So how did they give you that sense of identity and sense of belonging?
Um, I think it's the safety, I guess, of where I was. I think being close to my family. I think every family in Goa is very close, I guess, despite having your issues and things like that, they're all very close. Um, I think places that I could go to and feel like I belonged as well, like I didn't feel like an outsider,
Hmm.
because I think with Goan people, you kind of know everybody. It's a very small state in Goa. I'm sorry,
Hmm.
in India. It's you kind of know somebody kind of thing. So it kind of, it was, like I said, very close knit. So there was never a person that you kind of didn't know. If they didn't know me, they knew my parents, they knew my siblings, they knew like somebody in, in our um in our family kind of unit. So there was always somebody or somewhere who knew who you were. And I
Yeah.
think that was really, it was very different in that way because um it's very different to here, I guess, because here you don't really know a lot of people aside from maybe your nuclear family, your close family. You don't tend to, if you haven't grown up here, you don't tend to know your neighbors. You don't really tend to know a lot of people. They keep to themselves. Maybe it's a preservation thing, I guess. Very different to where I grew up.
So from some based on what you're saying, the community, it wasn't just your nuclear family, you had your nuclear family, but the community was also family. It wasn't,
Yes.
there wasn't really there was a difference, but it was that close.
Yes, yes, very,
Yeah.
very close, very close. I grew up in the suburbs, so I've always been a suburban girl. And it with I guess it stemmed from my mom really, who she knows everybody. Every time we go back, our house is like a revolving door. Everybody's there, everybody's visiting her. So by, association, you see all of these people and they always know you. But yes, that's basically what it was like. I felt safe there. I felt like I really did belong. I knew who everybody was. Um I saw them every day, if not every week, and in Goa, it's like parties on parties on parties every weekend, basically. Um, Lots of weddings and things like that. So you always saw people and you always um knew that you could always one relate, but also feel safe in spaces where perhaps you didn't know somebody as well.
Okay, fantastic. Now, being the youngest,
Yeah.
right? Were you spoiled? Were you the favored child? Were-
Uh, my siblings might say otherwise, maybe slightly, a little bit. But I think being the youngest also has its, its challenges. So I have a huge age gap between my siblings and I. So with my brother, we're 11 years. With my sister, I'm 12 years, I think. And with my oldest brother, it was 13 years. So I really was the youngest, and I think I lived with my mom predominantly, mostly, just because my dad was on the ship a lot, working on the ships. With her the most. So I spent a lot of time, I guess, with them the most, as well, especially after we moved here. So people like to think that I'm spoiled, but I'm not. I don't think so. I don't think so.
You're just right the way you are, isn't
Yeah,
it?
I'm just exactly the way I'm meant to be. I can't help it if they like me. So,
So, so tell me something then
mhm,
about, because you said that you grew up in Goa. What was it like in school? Clearly you had that community in the church, you had the
mhm.
community around. What was school like for you, and what did you enjoy or not enjoy about school?
School was very competitive, I think.
Mhm,
The level of education in India, or even quite a lot of like that's Asian, the Southeast Asian countries, level of education is quite high. So it's always a little bit competitive. But I found that in school, I had a great community of people there as well. I had lots of friends. I still would say I think I was slightly introverted then, and I still think I'm slightly introverted now. But I did have my core group of people that I need, like, that my ride or die people, if you will,
mhm,
that I could um, call. I could do, like see them on a regular basis, essentially. School was also my mom worked in the same school that I went to, so I would spend a lot of time in school. Ironic because I think I hated it. So, uh, but I think school was such a huge part of like, or even the structure itself, or and the people that worked there was such a huge part of my life for such a long time. Yeah, like I started in that particular school itself. I started from a very young age, from kindergarten up to I think year 8 before I
mhm.
moved. So they've been in my life and in my sister's life, because we both went to the same school, for a very, very long time. So they knew who we were. They knew who my parents were. It was like when I say it's close knit, I mean literally close knit. You couldn't get away with doing anything. I tried. I think my sister tried as well. So it was, it was a really like lovely place to go. You always felt like you were supported in some way or the other. Like I would spend summers in like with my friends running around, like with the other colleagues, my mom's colleagues' kids who were also around the same age as I was running around the place, like, causing havoc as we would do. So it was a like I think back to those days and I just think, wow, what a different time, what a great, childhood that I had, and always feeling like you were never alone.
Mhm.
You always felt like there was somebody there somebody to support you, somebody to like somewhere you belonged,
Yeah.
essentially.
So,
Yeah.
so you definitely had that sense of identity and belonging
Yeah.
within that area. And you said
Yes.
you were there up until equivalent of year 8. So
Yes.
what was the reason for leaving? Why did you come to the UK?
Well, one, we always wanted to move because a lot of my mom's family is here.
Right.
They do live here. They moved from East Africa around that time and then moved to the UK. But actually, for us, it sped the process a little bit more because, like I said, I had an older brother. He unfortunately passed away.
Mm,
So that kind of changed the trajectory, I guess, for the timeline for us a little bit more.
hmm
He was 28 at that point,
mm,
when he passed away, and we were all, I think, it was the whole like family, our nuclear family, just everything just changed for
mm,
us. So it was not a great time. I had just turned 13 as well. So he
hmm
he passed away a few weeks before I turned 13. So while not to make this about me, but while I was going through all of these different changes, obviously I was also experiencing grief
mm,
in such a way that I never ever experienced before.
mm,
And that was really, really hard because 13 is a time where, you're becoming a teenager. Things are changing for you, like hormones, all of these different things are playing such a huge part in your life. And then to have to go through that as well. I think that was the I remember aspects of the day, but it was w- it was unfortunately like in a we were all in a different like mindset. I think also the thing that sped us up, sped the move a little bit more was it's really hard to grieve in these places, in Goa in particular. Um, it's very because my brother, much like my mom as well, was well known. He was quite popular as a person. He was really well loved. So that really, the reminders of it every day through our neighbors, through our community, that safe haven that I had, that place that I thought I belonged, it was a constant reminder of him, I guess. And I think like I said, it's really hard to grieve in Goa. Everywhere you turn, you have that, sympathetic, like, oh,
mm, mm,
it's just it feels sometimes like a negative association. It just makes things even worse. It makes your grief feel even more
mhm.
and amplifies it really. And that was, I think, something that I guess for my parents, I don't know much of their decision making at that point, but I guess for my parents, it just was like, okay, well, you know, this is what we were like, not what we were waiting for, but kind of like my siblings were already here in the UK for university. It was just like, okay, well, I guess we're moving. I guess we're
Yeah,
gonna go, um, because it's hard here,
yeah,
very hard. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So it was a catalyst. A process
Yes.
had already started because clearly
Yeah.
your siblings were two of your siblings were already here, as you
Yeah.
said, at university. Um, and sometimes just getting away
Yeah.
is and not it sounds like your brother was an incredible person. Yeah,
Yeah. He was.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes almost like living in that shadow, it's really difficult.
Really is, yeah. Because like I was saying, while I was known as my mom's daughter, I was actually mostly also known by my brother's sister. So it's like, oh, that's Savia's sister, right? That's, like the nickname, like his sister. And that was basically what I was known as because huge age gap, I that was my kind of like um my identity, I guess, at that point, or part of my identity,
Yeah.
as a younger sibling.
Yeah. So okay. So but as you said, moving at the age of 13, right? Of all
Yeah.
the ages that you could move at, I don't think I could have you could pick a worse age than that. I'm gonna just say it. Yeah.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. It was hard. It was very, very hard because you're one going through all of these like changes, going through these experiences, like your body is changing, your like worldview is changing, like things are feeling different. You're like trying to figure out whether you belong somewhere. How does that work, kind of thing. And yeah, it was very tumultuous, I think. To also having to experience grief
Mm,
was, I think at that point I was just so sad. Like for that first, I don't even remember much about that year. I remember aspects of it. Maybe my brain just was like, we're not gonna even touch that, bring that up anymore. Um, but it just wasn't, um, yeah, it was the best. And then having to move to a new country with its own value system, with its own kind of like, intricacies that you have to go through, and then having to move to a new school, um, and having to, which was also, by the way, a mixed school, a co-ed school, so had boys and girls, which was nothing that I experienced before. Um, it was very like I didn't even know what to make of it. I was kind of like taken aback. I was like, oh, this is not things that you say. One is like very is it's very different. The way in which people speak here is different. The way in which people articulate things is different. The isms that you have as well. You can't do this necessarily. You can't say this necessarily. Um, you know, um, People look at you funny when you have an accent as well. And that was when I was like, well, I mean, I'm in a new country. I'm in a, different, like, we're going through things. Nobody knows about this. I was like, perhaps it's time to reinvent myself, because I think it was making myself more palatable as a person, because they didn't know who I was. I didn't know who they were. And I guess to belong in a way, I tried to change myself a little bit. So I tried to change even some of the way which I talk. You can't really pinpoint my accent as well a little bit. It's now amalgamating into like a really British, like South London accent, but like I changed pretty much everything about myself, because I was like, this is a new beginning, I guess. A new place, a new time, a new family as well that we were like, moving into, or experiencing, that we hadn't experienced before. That was very different. Yeah.
that that's really interesting in that you've said that you sort whether it was an opportunity or a necessity, you felt,
Mm,
this is a chance. I'm going through all these changes. I'm going through
yeah.
this grieving process. This is Let me find out who I am. And you just would you say
Yeah.
you were, well, as a 13-year-old, 14, everybody's always experimenting, trying to find
Yes.
what was right. So how then did you, when you started to engage with other young people, how did they receive you? Did you start gaining a new sense of identity because you had a strong one from home?
Yes.
Did you
Yeah.
now start to develop a new sense of identity and belonging?
Um, I don't think I developed anything at that point. I think I was still in my trial phase. I was like version like maybe one or two at this point of like trying to figure out who I was. I also went to a predominantly white school, so as in a lot of more white kids than they were minority ethnic kids. So that was another thing factor that played in, because I could tell that if you were a certain way, because I'm pretty good at observing things. So I just sit there and like I'm observing, I'm seeing what's happening. Um uh I saw that in the way in which people were um how people were interacting with you. So very soon I was like, oh, I need to be a certain type of way or have a certain type of personality to be able to make friends here, or to, I guess, assimilate in this kind of environment. Um, and it was something I got like I something I figured out very early on. Can't say it was the best decision I made, but it was a decision that, like, I was like, oh, we have to figure it out because, again, I didn't receive like like a guidance document or something to say like, oh, this is how you should act. This is how it was just something that I was thrust upon, trying to figure out. Also, taking the bus by myself in a new country, in a new, like, this was strange to me. The way in which people treat you, like, I didn't know that I would be so different. I would be so removed from this whole, because everybody in Goa is all the same. We like know each other. It's just everything was different here. So yeah.
And I suppose as well, because your siblings were older and they hadn't gone through the experience which you are now going through,
Yeah.
you couldn't necessarily ask them for their advice or anything.
Yeah, and maybe because I was an annoying younger sibling, I don't know. But like our relationship also was very different. So,
Mhm.
like I said, I between my siblings and I, um we have such a huge age gap that obviously they've watched me be annoying as a as a younger sibling. So I guess that association kind of traveled for a little bit. I'm hoping that it's broken now, but uh I think we didn't really speak on that level of like in that way, I guess. We kind of did our own thing. Um, and therefore I felt like I don't think they would understand moving, to a new school, particularly. I think they went to university here, which is slightly different. You're slightly older.
Mhm.
I guess university is a lot more like accepting, I guess. There's so many different people, but when you're in a school, it's so much more smaller. It's smaller and sm like it gets
Yeah.
smaller and smaller when you're in school. So it just was so stark, is what I could like describe it as. Yeah.
I'm just trying to then work out because you're effectively navigating that space
Mm.
almost by yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, essentially, yeah.
So I'm just trying to think about kind of like frames of rep because normally I'd ask about, well, who did you have as a mentor? Who was a role model? Who,
Yeah,
yeah. So where did you get your other than just looking at the students
yeah.
around, what was your frame of reference?
I have no idea. I have no idea how I navigated it. Like till this day, I'm like, what the heck was I doing? Um, I guess I've always been friendly as a person. I think I didn't think that would be a problem. I think in terms of making friends or talking to people, I think those first 3 years that I was there, the first year in particular, I was navigating friendships. I was like, okay, how does this work here? It's very different. I'm not really allowed to go out or do anything because,
Mhm,
preservation, I guess.
mhm,
But I think I had some friends, but I wasn't sure about them at that point. And then I kept meeting more people in my year group, and I guess I made some friends, but I knew it wasn't like strong bonds at that point, I guess.
mhm,
It was still like friendship. We would see each other. I think I made two pretty good friends at that point as well. But again, it's like I think as somebody who was trying to figure it out and trying to make friends and things, I held myself back a little bit in what I
mhm,
was saying and what I was doing. So I guess in some ways, those friendships were, I guess with most friendships in school, it's like you're in the same class, you're in the same kind of like year group. I guess
mhm,
you are friends. You don't really you don't really um go outside that a lot of the time, I guess.
mhm.
Um so for me, I don't that wasn't really a frame of reference. I just was just like, all right, we're gonna figure this out. We're gonna have to.
Okay, so moving forward then, when you went to kind of like moving out of kind of like teenage years into like
Hmm.
your, well, going off to university, you had siblings at
Yeah.
university. What was your motivations then for what subjects were you interested in? What was it that you wanted to do? What were your ideas about what you'd be doing in the future?
Well, I thought um just to kind of I was always Not always. I was okay in school academically. I was doing pretty
Mhm.
good. And I think with every expectation in an Asian household is you do some sort of science or, you go into kind of that um that's your kind of route basically. You go into the sciences. And I I did pretty well at school, even here in the UK. And then I went into sixth form, which also was its own disaster. I picked chemistry, maths, English lit, and media studies, and I was like, oh, media studies, English lit, it's gonna be fine. Whatever, it's gonna be like, I'm just gonna breeze through that. Uh, yes, kind of in a way. It was a good great for me to take, but I picked maths and chemistry, which two of the subjects that I really liked. For me to find out that they don't like me back. So it was its own challenge because again, it was another thing where I had to move to another school. So like I didn't even have anybody to that I could like another space where I again didn't know anybody. None of the people that I went to school with went to the same school that I did. They avoided it for good reason, I guess. Um, but it was again, it just made everything hard. And I think with the subjects that I studied, I was like, this is not one, not the way in which I learned things, I
Mhm.
guess. Um, but also like realizing that I was very different, I guess, and what my experiences that I had thus far
Mhm.
I didn't think took me in that science direction. As much as I enjoy it, as much as I love learning about it, I just don't think it was what I wanted. And I kind of was just still in that I would think I was in a weird phase of like stage of limbo. I wasn't
Mhm.
sure what I wanted to do, and I didn't realize how um quickly you had to make decisions as well.
Mhm.
Because like the idea of making decisions is not something that I'm good at.
Mhm.
So I was very kind of lost as well because I had to pick my GCSEs and I had to pick my A levels, and it was all just too quick for me to navigate to. And like I'm trying to experience a new school system and new friends, all of these different things, and it was just I didn't know what I was doing, I guess, at that point. And I would say to some extent, I didn't do great in my A levels.
Mhm.
Maybe it was a blessing in disguise. So I ended up going into business for university, another change, another school, another city. Um, so having to navigate that as well. That first year of university, I was not doing great because I didn't think I realized how much of an impact one grief was having on me and all of these different changes. So as I was saying, I had like the versions of myself that, Sheena 2.0. I think I was on Sheena 4.5 or something at this point. Like I was continually changing the way in which I was, my attitude, my understanding of things. And just trying to belong, really, trying to find a place that I could belong. And I just didn't feel like I did at that point. And all of these factors obviously have a huge impact on you as a person,
Yeah.
your motivations, your friendships, all of these different things. Like I was really going through it. It felt like at that point, it felt like it was everything was just happening at the same time. I have no idea how I navigated through that. Like I not sure.
It's interesting what you just said in terms of as you were trying to navigate through that space. In the back, whether subconsciously or consciously, there was that whole grieving process at the same time. And
Yeah,
it's almost like a continual, every time you had a change,
yeah,
right? A change of circumstance, you were
yes,
trying to reinvent yourself,
yeah,
trying to find something,
yeah.
yeah, to compensate. I'm not going to say compensate, but to adapt to the new circumstances that you found
Yeah,
yourself in.
yeah,
Yeah. So I'm because I always want to think about who people have around them, who's your support mechanisms as you're going through all of these changes. Because I know
yeah.
your mum and dad would have been also experienced, but they're much older. So how did you, and the other thing is, did you confide in your family, or was that not something that you felt that you could do?
Um, I wouldn't say we are very like touchy-feely, or like we don't talk about feelings a lot in our
Mhm.
family. Um, I think we're close, but I think it's a different type of close.
Mhm.
We've always done what we needed to do to just figure it out yourself, I guess.
Mhm.
Not to say that my family isn't supportive. They are, if they ever
Mhm.
get to watch this, just to say, prefacing this by saying they are supportive. Just, I think because we were all going through it
Mhm.
in our own way, it
Mhm.
was really hard to, I wouldn't say rely on each other, but to like, yeah, I guess rely on each other a little bit because we were experiencing a family unit like this that hadn't happened before in a very long time, which is we were all living together. But that hasn't happened because of the different, the age gaps.
Yeah.
Um, so it was one hard navigating that. That was ridiculously hard. Um, having to like I just didn't feel like I could go to them just because I knew like we were all going through the same thing. It just made it added another layer of hardness or hardship to the to what was already existing. I had my cousin who's 1 year older than me, who lives in the UK as well, who was I think my closest confidant at that time. Um, and we were sort of navigating things, but like she didn't really know. I guess I wasn't really open about my feelings about things. I guess nobody asked me how I felt.
Mhm.
I think people assume, oh yeah, obviously she's going through stuff, but like it's whatever. It is
Mhm.
what it is. But I don't think anybody asked me. I guess my siblings were there to support me. I know they were I became very close with my sister as well at that point, after university. Um, so we were sort of building our relationship with each other as well as a family.
Mhm.
Um, I lived with my mom the longest, I guess, at that point, and I was building my relationship with my siblings because we knew each other as rivals a little bit, or me as the annoying sibling. But building a relationship now after this fact, like, after my brother passing away, after them as grown-ups and me as growing up or as becoming a grown-up, I guess, at this point, or becoming an adult,
Mhm.
um, it was very different, very, very different. So wouldn't like I said, I had a support system, but we were also navigating that, I guess,
Yeah.
in that time. So lots of changes happening in
Yeah.
that like 10-year period.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's gaining that sense. You're constantly trying to gain that
Yeah.
sense of identity, sense of belonging during that
Yes.
10-year period.
Yes.
So I, I'm just interested then in
Yeah.
how you, from your studies and everything else, how did you kind of like get into the whole sphere of equity, diversity, and inclusion? Or how did
Hmm.
we navigate that space?
Um, well, I was after university,
Mhm.
I didn't make plans for what I wanted. Like as in I didn't apply for any really graduate schemes and stuff like that. Because again, it was one of those things that like another change that I have to go through again, like in a very short period of time.
Mhm.
I think I was fed up and I was just kind of like, this is too much is happening. Too much has happened also. Um, I kind of came out of university and I was like, oh, okay, I need to apply for jobs. I need money. So I had an advert for Imperial sent to me. It was just like an administrative role. It's something that I had done previously anyway in my summer jobs, an administrative role. And I was like, it's a temporary position. I started in mechanical engineering way back when. Um, and it was like one of those, it was a month kind of like temporary position, which I was like, fine, I just need money to survive. I need to pay my, like my overdraft, that thing I had to do, pay my bills and things like that. Um, I got a job at Imperial, and I guess they liked me enough for me to be like, for them to be like, oh, we have another position with our project officer. Do you want to work with them as a temp administrator? And I said, yep, that's fine. Did all of that. Again, like changes upon changes, seems to be never ending in my life at this point. And then I got a temporary position in edict. It was, I think, autumn 2016. And that's when I met, I guess, the team. And I was like, oh, these people are different. They work on different things. The idea of like equity, diversity was nothing that I think I was conscious about. I
Hmm.
just knew through, my upbringing, you treat people with respect, you treat people with kindness, you help I think for us in our family, you help as much as you can.
Hmm.
As much as you offer that kind of support. So it was always embedded in me, and I just didn't realize it had a name. So coming to Imperial, with my, that first interaction with Edic, I was like, oh, you guys are different. You do different things. You like your take on things is very different. And then I very quickly again moved to another position in LDC, or now known as Pod. Um, and I worked there for a couple of months again, and then I came back to Edic because I guess they enjoyed working with me. Because now here I am, 7 years later. They offered me a position, a temporary position again, with them as an administrator. And I guess from then I've just grown into my role. And I think my belief system, my experiences, my outlook on life has changed. And I think I'm what I didn't realize had a name to, or now has a name to it, equity, diversity, inclusion, all of these different things that I believe in personally, I could now actively, contribute to, or make people feel safe in the workplace, which is what I would have wanted way back when I came to this country and I started school, have a support system, which is so important. I didn't realize
Hmm.
that you could even have like these are options that I didn't even want think to obviously look for, but I also didn't realize you could have as well. I thought everything felt so individual at that point,
Hmm.
but now I feel like it's very different working in our team. We're very close as another place that I thankfully now belong. A place where we are close. We work very closely with each other. We have similar beliefs as well, and I think that it's kind of like built the identity that I have right now. Um, I'm a lot more, I guess, I know where I stand, I guess, and I don't feel like I'm in limbo anymore. I feel like I know who I am as an individual, and I feel like I belong somewhere, which is which is a great feeling to have
Hmm.
after a very long time of not feeling like you could. Not to say that I didn't have friendship groups where I didn't feel like I did. Do have great friends actually. Some of them might be on this call, but it was just so different for me having to navigate through all of that, having to finally feeling like this version point 6, I guess, version
Hmm.
Sheena 6.0, I guess, now feels like I'm in a good place. I know where I stand. I know my identity a little bit more, and I feel like I can belong somewhere. And it's not like doesn't feel like I have to I don't feel like I have to change myself too much to try and assimilate or try to, you know,
So I'm gonna ask a kind of like an abstract question based on what you've just said,
sure.
in that now you feel that you're almost like a Sheena 6.0, right?
Yeah, yeah,
But I'm just wondering about the fact that you had a really safe, secure upbringing up until the age of about 13, and then you went
yeah,
through the in the sense of belonging that you have now.
yeah.
How would you compare that to that sense of belonging that you had when you were much younger? Have you come to a place of almost like equilibrium where you can feel, I'm happy with who I am in a similar way to the way that you felt I'm happy with how I was before? Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes, I think I feel like we've come to an equilibrium actually. Um, I feel like maybe slightly off because I think there's still something I guess I'm looking for. I have no idea what this is, but it'll come to me with another change, who knows. Um, but I do feel now a lot more secure and a lot more um Like I understand who I am.
Hmm.
Like before, I guess I was also associated with so many different people. Here I'm not that.
Hmm.
I'm not my
Yeah.
mother's daughter
Hmm.
necessarily. They don't know me in that way. I'm not so and so's sister. Like in my, in my environment, I am me. I'm Sheena, trying to like, I'm just who I am right now. It's I never thought I would feel that way like I
Hmm.
did in my childhood. Um, I feel like I do feel some bits of it. I do feel safe. I do feel like I have now a support system that I think better I understands me now that I can articulate from the fights that we would have when I was younger. But I feel like I can articulate myself a lot better, and I think I can advocate for myself a lot more.
Hmm.
And I feel like I I guess that's what I've been wanting for a very long time.
Kind of, I don't know if anyone else has got questions. If you do, then put your hands up and I'll come to you. But there was another question that in going through the experiences that you have,
Yeah,
do you feel that that has made you better in the role that you now undertake in terms of the equity, diversity, and inclusion? You mentioned it about the
yeah,
supporting system.
yeah.
Is there anything else which is kind of like you can draw on your previous versions to say, actually, this could help us to understand how people are navigating spaces?
Yes. Um, I think the um we all tend to have like identity crises, I guess, when you, especially if you're a minority ethnic person in
Mhm.
a work environment that is predominantly, say, white or has a, particular type of or particular majority. Um, it I think for me, um, that was very apparent, I guess. Even in some of the Imperial as one, conversations that I guess have been in the background of,
Mhm.
um, and in the conversations that we have at, in the workplace as well, I felt like people don't bring their full selves to work, and I understand why. It's very understandable.
Mhm.
Um, it's it's very scary, especially if you just moved to a new country. I can bring those experience. Yeah, I guess, like, long story short, to say yes, yeah, I do see that. I can see what how my experiences does bring that in. Um, the inclusion part of it was very different because we have different belief systems in Goa, and but I feel like I've always been accepting as an individual. I've always been um willing to learn and willing to always observe and kind of form my own beliefs.
Mhm.
And I guess that changed as well over time. So I think it's kind of in the way in which I work, in the way in which I am as a person, I guess, is what I think brings to the role. I guess you can ask Kenny that if you want. You can see what she saw in me all those years ago. Um, but yeah, I feel like, yeah, I do that. I think in my role, I do. I hope I do anyway. Um, I hope I feel people feel safe, like they can come to me or can approach me or do feel safe in whatever they're telling me. I
Mhm.
hope that that has translated
Mhm.
because that's what I would have wanted and that's what I hope to be for somebody else.
I think that's brilliant. I'm going to ask my two final questions then, right?
Sure.
Um, and the first of those questions, as I said, they're kind of like two of the same questions but worded
Yeah.
slightly differently. So the first one is, what advice would you have given to your younger self? Right. And after what you've told us, I'm not sure, but right, what advice would you have given to your younger self? And what do you think your younger self would look at you now and say, wow?
I'll answer the last question first because
Yeah.
that's, I think, I think just the fact that given everything that I've just told you, even I'm like, in reflection and like, wow, how the heck did I go through all of that
Yeah.
and still manage to come out with not many bruises, I guess. Um, I think my younger self would have been I would actually I hopefully be proud of me. It, given the amount of stuff that we went through together, I guess my younger self and you know just we it's been a lot. So I think be really proud of where we are today and how we've managed to navigate it, even though there were so many barriers that could have been in place, how we overcame some of them as
Mhm.
well. How, yeah, I think just really proud. I know I'm really proud of myself. So I'm hoping that my younger version would be really proud of me. I think we had obviously when you're young, you dream so much of who you will be as an adult and who you will be as a person. And I think the thoughts that I had then of what I could have been, I'm sure the person that I am now is the person that I think I'd want to be. So yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. And the advice part, I have no idea. I think just go with the flow sometimes. Things get really hard. Um, and I think just like don't compare yourself to other people because like I said, my journey is very different. My
Mm.
siblings' journey is very different. My parents' journey is very different. Your journey is very different. I think
Mhm.
comparing your experience or whatever is just not going to be helpful, conducive. I think we find ourselves a lot of the time, especially now in the age of social media, it's so easy to compare your life with somebody else's
Mm.
and feel like they have it better off or whatever. It's not always the case. We're hiding so many different things which we don't talk about. So yeah, I think just don't compare yourself. I think just do what you need to do and kind of yeah, just like things will happen when it happens. But yeah, that's my advice, I guess.
That's what. Go with the flow.
Go
Yeah,
with the
go with the
flow.
flow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, there's a question which has just come in. All right,
Yes.
Rama, go ahead, please.
Hello, hi
Hi.
Sheena. Oh, thanks
Hi.
so much for your long interview today. It was really, really good, really interesting. And it's just
Thank you.
so wonderful actually to hear about your journey because there's so many similarities, I think, for a lot of us.
Yes.
And I was reflecting on that journey that your family made and the time
Hmm.
that they made it for you, right? Because
Yes.
I think about me and my family, and we had a big loss before we moved
Yeah.
to the UK. My father had passed sort of just a year or two before, and my sister was 13 when she moved. And
Yeah.
we're quite spread in our family, right? So we've got my big sisters like yours, who were
Yeah.
just like, they just went straight into uni pretty much. And then there's me, who was kind of just too young to kind of know what was going on.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like I was relocating my roots, my entire sense of identity was not reforming,
Yeah.
right, in the way that it sort of is. And you spoke really beautifully to that. So like thank you actually that transition period and what happens. And I just want to say like it's so impressive because those are really really formative years and you should really think about like, and I know you kind of already do know how impressive it is that that you managed to navigate all of that in the way that you did, but anything you can offer by way of advice for like overcoming that challenging period and relocating at the same time is just so helpful to people, I think, who are going through the same thing.
First of all,
Um,
thank you so much. I don't like I'm a person that's behind the scenes, so being in like this format where I'm up front is very weird to me. So thank you. I really appreciate your kind words and yeah, and then I'm really sorry for the loss of your dad. It's not it's hard to navigate that and having to move as well. Clearly, I understand. Um, I don't, I'm so good at putting together guidance documents. I'm not sure how I would, I think thinking about what would I say? I don't know. It's all pretty individual. I think as long as as long as the person can access, I guess, support is probably great. I think having support internally is always great, but I think sometimes you need to come out of it because we're all kind of going through the same thing. It may not be how to access that. I have no idea. There might be services, I'm not sure. But if I
Mm,
had like an external person that I could just go to talk
mhm,
freely, where it wouldn't come back to my parents, it wouldn't come back to like a teacher
mhm.
or anything like that. If I had that, I think I would have really, really would love that. I would have loved that because where do you turn to when you are so new to, you know, this country? Where do you turn to when when you're still trying to figure out things? Where do you go to when you can't necessarily go to your family because they won't also understand in a way, um, because their
And also,
experiences
they've
are
been through
slightly
a lot
different.
themselves.
Yeah,
Their experience is
exactly.
different, and they've been through a lot as well. You don't want to burden them with even
That's
more.
exactly how I felt. Yeah, I was like, I don't want to add like another layer of like burden to the already existing, like, crap that we had to go through. Like it was too much. So I was like, I
Yeah.
wish I would, there was a way in which we could, I don't know, share the experience and like, or somebody to talk to, I guess, who felt like so removed out of that, thing. I don't know. I don't know whether I've answered the question, but I would hope that there's something like that. I can't write a guidance document, unfortunately, on this one. It's not possible. It would be very one-sided otherwise. But yeah,
No, it's super personal.
yeah, it's
I
very
would just add maybe one thing which came up in that, and I think it sort of goes to show the importance actually of the because we talk, my experience and what you said sort of
yeah,
backs it up is that when you come in to a university, you mentioned something about the kind of openness to
yeah,
various identities that you don't have when you're at school, right? School
no,
is about fitting in, it's about all of that stuff.
yeah,
And just thinking about even this platform, Wayne, and the work that you're trying to do, Sheena, right? In EDIC, it's so important that we keep
yes,
universities like that,
yeah,
because that's really such a positive, actually, in so many people's stories that it was a place they could flourish, a
yeah,
place where they could feel actually included,
yes,
and accepted in their identities. So I don't know. I think that speaks hugely to the work that you're doing and its importance as well. So
thank you.
yeah, thank you.
This I'm gonna just say thank you, Red, for your question, and for Sheena. Yeah, yeah, I always see Sheena as someone who's always got a big smile, always got a big smile. And underneath, hearing what you've gone through, right, to the fact that you're still smiling, it's testament to your resilience. It's testament to you finding your way through those situations. And I just want to say really thank you for sharing your experience with us. Um, yeah, I can't say any more than that. It's just we're here to support, you know, and I know that within the Edict Center, it's a great team. So you've got another extended flat family
Yes,
within there, you know.
yeah,
So that's brilliant. So
thank
I'm
you.
gonna just let people know what we're doing next week. And as I said, Sheena was our birthday guest. So thank you for being our gift that keeps on giving. Right. Um but for next week, we're going to have a young lady called Leanne Armitage, and she's a doctor. She's a professional speaker, and she's a author, author and co-founder of the Armitage Foundation, which is a way of. Well, I'm going to let you go and have a look at that. It's a really amazing foundation that she set up to help empower um, underprivileged students to make it into medicine. It's a great thing. It's a slightly later time next week. It's from 1 till 2, unfortunately, but we still will have a session. So if you have missed any of the previous interviews, then please go to our YouTube channel, which is tinyurl.com/belonging-IAO. And we've got a lot of other interviews and a lot of other guests who have shared their experiences. And here are some of them, not all of them, but here are some of them. And I'm going to have to be adding Sheena and a number of other people onto it, because they have all shared their experiences of how they have found their sense of identity and sense of belonging. And it was just this week I was thinking about it, and I was saying, sometimes when we don't listen and see other people's voices, we have all of these barriers or these stereotypes which prevent us from understanding things from their point of view. So let's try and just take that time to hear somebody's voice. And in hearing them, I know that our opinions will change. So let's keep finding that place where we all belong. Have a great week, and I will see you again next week.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Wayne.